President's House and the restoration of the old police headquarters. And she is now acting as consultant dedicated to the preservation of heritage. Rudolin, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to end these presentations on this is short, light, and a very positive note. This old house is the latest restoration project in Trinidad, in Port of Spain, and the building is called Millflare. It is part of one of the 7 mansions that grace the western side of the Queen's Park Savannah in Port of Spain. And it creates a historic district that was included on the CARIMOS Monuments of the Greater Caribbean list. You can see from the picture, these monuments all stand together on one street side by side. Millflare was built in 1904 and is considered a Grade 1 property by the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. That is a property in which there should be no change or alteration to its shape or form, or change of material, or in anything that can deform or deface the property. Mrs. Prada, the daughter of a Venezuelan cocoa baron, built this house for her husband, Dr. Henry K. Prada, as a wedding gift. Both Dr. Prada and Mrs. Prada were born in Venezuela, but Dr. Prada received his formal education in Trinidad and later attended King's College in London. He was the first mayor of Port of Spain. The family lived there for 20 years. Subsequent owners were the Salvatore family and the Matuk family. It was purchased by the government of Trinidad and Tobago in 1977 and used as government offices for the Ministry of Culture for many years. But in true government fashion, the building was never maintained properly, fell into dilapidation, and it was abandoned by the government eventually. This is what the poor building looked like after being abandoned for so many years. Although we have a lot of wood structures, all timber structures in Trinidad, most of our wood heritage buildings are buildings that are framed in timber, but have for their exterior walls an infill with adobe and plastered over to look like masonry walls. This photograph will show you this sort of structure that I'm talking about. The top right picture shows the wood framing exposed, the infill with adobe masonry, and the plastering over to look like a solid wall. Now, in that picture, the plaster was removed from the timber structure so that you can see it. But that was only done to take this photograph to show what the inside and what the structure of the building looked like. The other photograph shows another building with the timber structural framing, but that is infilled with lime and river sand and gravel. And that composition generally had a lot of organic material because the sand and gravel was taken from the river. Millflare was built in that way. It's a wood-framed building on the upper floor, and all the walls on the inside, ground floor and the upper floor were also made out of timber. The outer walls on the upper floor were infilled with lime masonry, which was made again with river sand and river gravel. And in some of the places, lime concrete was used as an intervention in restorations that were previously done. In 2013, an activist group called Citizens for Conservation held a protest rally objecting to the dilapidated state of the building. It took about 7 years of public pressure and 2 other rallies before the government finally dedicated funds for the restoration of the building. This is what the building actually looked like before restoration. And every once in a while, members of Citizens for Conservation would pass and put flowers on the gate or on the fence, in the same way that we do when somebody dies, because we were all so sad to see the building get to this stage. And eventually what happened before the restoration, a couple of years before the restoration, is the government put a complete roof over the whole building, because we were so concerned about the ingress of water in the rainy season. Water was just pouring through the roof of the building, pouring through the roof, through the first floor, down to the ground floor. And this roof was put on. It stayed like that for a couple of years before restoration actually began. Restoration began in 2019, and the building was restored. Everything was put back the way it was originally, where there was wood was reused. And the only real modern intervention actually was a toilet that was put in because, well, we need to have toilets in new buildings. This is the main entrance foyer, and this is the original staircase. Just to show you some of the work that was done, the doors, all the original doors were restored and put back in place. The doors were removed, they were cleaned up. Those that were in need of restoration were taken apart. The original pieces were repaired, and the door was put back together and reinstalled and refinished. This is the dining room, and the dining room doors led out onto a veranda, and you can see the encaustic tiles on the floor of the veranda. Again, this is another picture of the dining room. So throughout the house, this is what the ceilings looked like, basically, because water had been pouring through the roof and through the upper floors, and it actually destroyed the ceilings of the lower floor. The floor itself in this dining room is original. This fortunately we were able to save, and it was simply refinished. This is the rear veranda, and this is what it looked like before restoration. It was in an absolute state of ruin, and it's now beautifully done with all the fretwork and the timber columns and the balustrade and everything rebuilt and redone. This is again the back veranda, before and after. Unfortunately, there was the staircase that was on this veranda that led to the upper floors was not replaced. By the time they got around to doing the restoration, that staircase had collapsed and was no longer in existence. But hopefully we'll get around to putting it back one of these days. But this is what the back veranda now looks like. The floor is completely new, as the floors of the upper floor. We used Green Heart, which is a hardwood from Guyana. And because we have a lot of problems with termites in Trinidad, we wanted a floor that was going to last, you know, for another few generations. But it was originally a wooden floor, and we replaced it with wood. This is what the formal sitting room on the ground floor looked like. The ceiling was again rotted because of ingress of water from the roof. And I just wanted to show you this ceiling rose, which was made of wire and plaster. So delicate. The whole building has a beautiful, delicate, feminine touch to it. These are the moldings in the formal sitting room. Honestly, when all of the restoration started, it was really only paint holding some of these things together. Because if you just stuck your finger on it, your finger went straight through, because the timbers were so termite eaten and so rotted. Most of that was simply removed and reconstructed out of timber and repainted. These are the upper rooms. The floors again replaced with Green Heart, because none of these floors survived the rain that was coming through the roof. All of the fretwork was restored and repaired. Most of the doors are original that were again restored and put back in as they were before. This is the west veranda of the upper floor. And on this veranda, this veranda is part of the house, which was a main corridor in the house. And for privacy, the fretwork and the beautiful balustrades and the timber shutters were used so that people on the outside could not see inside while you walked from one space to the other. It's really quite beautifully restored. And you see we have on the before picture, you see the mesh, which was really put there to stop the pigeons flying in when the building was abandoned. Millflare has been adapted to a new use. It is now the home and the headquarters of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. It's now accessible to the public, and this helps to promote the National Trust's drive for adaptive reuse. The building was a home, and it is now being used as the headquarters of the National Trust. We're going to have exhibitions, events celebrating Trinidad's cultural heritage and festivals, rentals for weddings and formal parties, lectures, permanent display of Caribbean antiques for sale. There's a gift shop. There will be a proposed tea shop. It's now used as a venue for photo opportunities and film, conferences and meetings for NGOs, training workshops. And all of these events and these things that are happening now at Millflare, this allows the building to generate funding for its maintenance and subsequently conserving it for future generations. By setting an example and reusing an old building for a new use, the Trust hopes to demonstrate that we can utilize these buildings as part of a heritage tourism initiative, build on the process of transmitting heritage from one generation to the next by encouraging cultural, creative industries as a means of economic diversification. This will allow Trinidad and Tobago to achieve competitive advantage as a tourism destination. We can't compete with Barbados and Antigua and Jamaica with sun, sea, and sand. But what we have are beautiful buildings, and we want to begin to use them as part of our tourism trust. We want to use heritage as a vehicle to engender national pride and identity. We want to encourage the growth of information and communication technologies, which can be harnessed to preserve and promote heritage. We are going to generate revenues resulting from the promotion of Trinidad and Tobago's tangible heritage assets. We want to preserve and display architecture that is representative of all levels of the social spectrum. We believe we want to ensure that people understand that it's not just the big and pretty great houses that need to be restored. The smaller houses are also important. We are going to promote the formulation of a comprehensive heritage plan for the restoration, maintenance, and management of the heritage sector. These old buildings are just dear to our hearts. They seem to cast a strange spell over us. And this building in this slide is the first building that was saved from demolition by citizen action. We actually went out and stood in front of the bulldozer to stop this building from being demolished. This was the first building saved by citizen action, and Millflare is the most recent building saved by citizen action in Trinidad and Tobago. So the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago would like to thank you for the opportunity to contribute and be part of this conference. We look forward to future cooperation and participation in all activities and in all trusts and plans aimed towards the preservation of our wood heritage in the Caribbean and in the world in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.